When did your drinking problem begin?
After 2 tours in Vietnam, destruction began to overwhelm me. Half my soldiers turned into addicts. Military's frustrating as hell. Victory bases itself on premise you function in a manner more cunning than your enemy in order to defeat him at his own game. Competency isn't easy when no one follows rules.
What do you mean by competence?
Ability to get a job done. Accomplishing a mission has priority over welfare of men. Commanders do not take men's welfare first.
Objectives have greater significance in wartime.
Militarism cannot be democratic.
Why is that?
You can't operate with a humanistic attitude in the military.
What else do you feel?
Militarism supports democracy. It performs with the same tactic adversaries base their logic on to defend a government.
I'm advising your health could cost everything you've worked all your life to accomplish.
Main doctrines in the military is hurry up and wait. If disposition determines the battle, momentum's important. If leadership is effective but combatants have a poor attitude, they will lose in any battle.
What has been the most trying aspect of being a soldier that you can remember?
Vietnam. I was entirely committed to doing my job. Nothing else mattered. My wife and children were 8,000 miles away in the United States.
Looking back, did you estimate your life to be normal before that war?
In Korea there was bitter cold to contend with. It took a lot of perseverance to survive that bitter climate.
What prompted you to seek out women other than your wife?
I could not blame it on neglect. Peggy is the most attentive person a man could ask for. My girlfriend's name was Suan Trang.
Talk about her.
During the Vietnam War, in 1971 she was a mistress.
Why is it that you don't describe women as your biggest vice until end of your career?
Women have always been my biggest problem.
What prompted your antipathy?
Except the chain of command, or women when I had to, I avoided starting close friendships.
Tell me more.
I came home from my tour when the Tet Offensive was reaching its peak. I lied to Red Cross so I could get out of the country.
What's the longest time you remained true to Peggy while you were in the army?
From the time we met and got married in Monterey back in '65 till I was sent to Vietnam in August '67, Mr. Hurst.
Why the extramarital activity?
You wouldn't understand unless you lived in countries like Vietnam or Korea during the war with North Vietnamese and Korean communists. I witnessed a monk burned to death. Vietnamese took abuse from French and Americans. It was nothing compared with disregard for human life they experienced as Vietmen overwhelmed them.
The monk was disseminating to followers. No excuse exists for taking in another's name. Moses wrote in Genesis, "He who takes the blood of man by his own hand, so shall his blood be taken by man."
Am I to stand by and watch family and associates mauled, hacked to death by madmen?
What other incidents did you witness?
Bystanders resorted to violence. The uprising was fueled by instigators in the National Liberation Front who received instructions from Hanoi. Demonstrators were protesting the Prime Minister's refusal to allow them to participate in elections.
How did the Prime Minister get appointed?
Ngo Dinh Diem, elected president, allowed a power-hungry brother to run the government. Nguyen Cao Ky was later installed Prime Minister, by Nguyen Van Thu, later elected president, and his Armed Forces Council. Vietnam was a madhouse. Indignant toward the world as our conflict came to an end, incessant disagreement with my wife is what interested me in a Vietnamese girl who worked at one of the nightclubs in Bien Hoa.
Talk some more about the havoc and violence that you've seen in war.
Ho Chi Minh sent 60,000 communist troops down from the north. Death squads from the People's Liberation Army and regular Viet Minh frontline troops stormed the American Embassy and Presidential Palace in Saigon. Miss Trang kept me thrilled in bed and the old club Mama San kept me drunk. I never kept anything Sue gave me except an odd-looking gold pendant. It belonged to gangsters in France, controlling much of the gambling and opium trade in Saigon.
There is always a single individual who will follow any cause, no matter how ignominious that cause might be. He will be part of it simply out of a longing to fraternize. The most malignant rulers throughout human history have taken advantage of this cold fact. When scapegoating is applied, there arises insurrection within culture. Reasons for your involvement were political. Causes of America's unwillingness to resolve the conflict were ethical. Demographically, you were defeated before you ever started into the war.
Massive buildup of manpower the Communist Chinese and North Korean governments are capable of mustering is frightening. Ideology is what motivates an army.
There are mercenaries who will fight solely out of desire for monetary gain.
If ideology doesn't provide incentive for defending a country, money will have no effect in winning wars.
Is it carelessness and passive indifference to fate that allows us to be thrown into winds of a war?
I'm a soldier, not a historian.
How do you explain death?
My dying won't affect the universe.
Ever feel necessity for last rites?
That is a priest's job, not mine. I contend that which guides people to positions of authority is based on avarice, greed, and selfish appeasement of sexual desire.
Do you look on authority as appeasement of sexual desire? If you were to come up with something innovative which could be used as a food source or a weapon, would you allow its use in taking human life?
Yes, I probably would, in certain instances. Pacifist attitudes of the United States are what left the most colorful society and habitable climate on Earth in the hands of communists.
Our time is about up. You know I am sincerely interested in your problems. If there's anything I can do, let me know.
My children disappoint me. My daughter Linda left us.
Stan climbed into his old Chevrolet and sped homeward. Tom, his son, waited.
Can I use the car for my date?
Put gas in the car. Mind the front left tire. It's getting threadbare. Going with Nancy?
Yeah, Nancy. Filling station. And the Fairchild's at 6. Any last requests?
Don't get any tickets.
Stan ascended stairs to his front porch. He pictured his son chasing pigeons in a park. Stan dreamed of people and faces. They all seemed to support him. Stan woke in a delirium.
Are you all right?
Swear I died for a moment and woke to find out something ominously frightening. The appearance was like some macabre cloud passing overhead, comprised of all the fear and hatred condensed in mankind. Its influence was a strange sense, like being in the shadow of a horribly evil presence. I knew the influence had come to collect me. I could feel the impending catastrophe but refused to recognize the intuition until it passed and I could feel the sun again.
What was it you found out?
I have nightmares over people who died in Cambodia and Vietnamese who drowned fleeing the country after American military left.
Come on Stan, I will help you to bed.
You know I have never experienced anything like that premonition before. It was helpful to talk to the psychologist and explain what was happening between us.
What did another woman? I know you never admitted it to me. Was somebody else in your life all that time we were apart?
You know, that is just not true.
Sue had memory of barrages and bombing strikes that shook her childhood playgrounds. Theosophical proselytism was a crucial influence. Knowledge of Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path state existence is suffering, and that suffering springs from egotistic desire. Hence, elimination of suffering comes through extinction of desire. The path stresses insight into mastery of motives in the practice of proper attitudes, speech, and conduct in pursuit of livelihoods. Sue preserved love for her mother. An influx of people moved to Saigon. Sue settled into an unbidden environment. One morning she was resting. As she rested she dozed. As she dozed she dreamed. North Vietnam established itself above the 17th parallel. National Liberation Front and People's Liberation Army continued war in South Vietnam, taking instructions from Hanoi and receiving their supplies from North Vietnam. When Sue was 14 she left her mother, the refugee camp and living conditions that darkened her adolescence. Sue dreamed of mysticism. Cloudy realism brought serenity. She floated tranquilly in a state of discontinuity. She envisioned her death, sudden, abrupt and violent. In the vision an old man cleaned a street in front of his shop, with broom and dustpan. He laid the dustpan down before returning to his shop to consume banbo, rice cake. The unaffected act of beautification benefited his fellow man and he became pleased. The thought soothed his mind in the manner that banbo appeased his hunger. She awakened. Breathing in short gasps, the chimera of faces faded. She began to relax. Working a nightclub of the city, she donated minute portions of the proceeds from her work to bodhisattvas. One of the tenets of her faith was that all that she did in her lifetime would follow her in a form of karma. Sue felt that people's destinies resolve by their actions in their lifetime. All this made up the gratifying entrapment that Sergeant Bradley experienced during his second tour of duty in Vietnam.
Stan met Sue and danced in the club. Outside her room was the world. Inside was her love. He thought of his desire to be with his wife and children. Their passion constituted gaiety before a tortured backdrop of war and human anguish. Each exciting moment they spent together was satisfaction to him. Sue herself thought along these lines. agonizing over mankind's dubious rationalization that always leads to the intimidation of one group by another and to the usual provocation into acts of violence.
Fasting, meditation, and chanting were continual among monks. Any who joined perpetual prayer became embraced. Sue acceded to the holy men. Though her promiscuity was renowned, her moral character abjectly regarded. She prayed with them when managers didn't require her services. Sue would leave the nightclub and go to pray in the temples, or observe men gambling. This she often did when the soldiers left on offensives into northern provinces of Vietnam, or westward to borders of Cambodia and Laos. American mahjong seats 4 players. Students joined officials supervising players' arms collectors. Wealth passed from farmers and merchants to hands of avaricious men controlling the game. To French, Americans and once respected Mandarins the game had become strictly illegitimate. Political officials were seldom able to tax the winner's wealth. As a result of the game's enigmatic qualities, dealings became kept in confidence. Tokens she gave to her mother, when they exceeded expenses of the club owned. From individuals indulged in gambling, one had become chosen to represent his town or village based on skill and winnings. Big winners took a set of game tiles, along with tribute from all districts home to their villages. Cash benefit was a grandiose figure. For one man the winnings were sufficient to buy a house, a farm and great deal of livestock. Auspicious winners of each year's games vested responsibility of hosting the next year's tourney. The gambling tiles themselves were of great value. Consolidation of its pieces was a responsibility of the winner. Should tiles become lost, holder of last year's proceeds forfeited to the next winner. No life was sacrosanct in recovering them. It was custom among bachelor winners to pledge 1 tile to a prospective bride. The newly married couple had to return to Dam Pagoda. A syndicate from France guaranteed wealth associated with the mahjong tiles. Upon return of pieces to Hue for use in next year's tournament, annuities were set the couple. Trung had the valuable Summer Sun gaming piece fitted with a gold chain and hung it around Sue's neck.
I present you with the radiant sun of this summer season. It is in your own interest that I bestow this tile of the Enlightened One's teachings on you. Lack of compassion for my relatives, I sorrowfully admit, has always been one of my assorted shortcomings.
I will hold the tile for 1 week. If I am unable to meet your demands, I will return the tile of the Summer Sun to you at the end of that time.
If that is your wish. Next week, we will travel north to the Central Highlands and return the Summer Sun to Dam Pagoda.
Trung decided to pay Su Trang's debts to the club's Mama San. The presentation of 1 tile from the set of 144 bound them in a contract. To Su it was an instant opportunity to pull her mother from the clutches of poverty. Su decided to wait until Sergeant Bradley returned, to tell him of Trung's proposal of marriage. Trung kept calm about seeing Miss Strang. Trung led a wild life, wiser in ways of gamblers and drug dealers than agriculturists. He sat with men trading glances, as each of them counted in rotation to tally on a pair of dice. Successful at last, Trung held no sympathy for the impoverished farmers. He had lived like them most his life. After celebrating his victory, and being young and lusty, Trung's interest led to women, in particular to Miss Strang. The Nguyen family was never aware of his interest in Su until his proposal was complete. Trung, encumbered by intoxicants, returned to his father's house at night, unable to walk all the way. He passed out on a roadside. He dreamed as he slept. A blackbird came to perch on a bamboo stalk. The bird screamed to her mate in raspy calls. She was the embodiment, in the boy's slumbering recollections, of Parvati, the Hindu god of wind, daughter of the mountains, consort to Shiva, god of destruction.
Brahma's treasure is to return to Bodhisattvas in their village at the base of Mount Kailash. Wake up. Brahma implores you return Miss Strang's gift. You are a fool to give a woman so precious a thing as that which Brahma bestowed on you. Rama's radiant jewel signifies the key to your eventual enlightenment and eternal contentment. All things vanquished to you. You did not return to your Creator love and kindness in exchange for worldly gifts bestowed on you.
Raindrops began to splash his face. Trung woke up. By the time the spiritualistic embodiment of Parvati and her husband Shiva vanished, all males in the family had been soldiers. Thang, involved in the Tet Offensive from start to finish, learned of the suicidal violence inspired by Viet Minh leaders in the Communist Army. Thang captured the country's prestigious honors in combat. He was a tactician. accomplished in martial arts, and regarded fearfully when provoked. Trung woke up in the morning, pulled mosquito netting from his bed, breathed in clean air, and rejoiced in a new freedom caused by his skill and fortune at gambling. Trung made the family instantly wealthy. To many of his countrymen this type of wealth became viewed as something akin to black market plunder, because no tax piled itself on the grand prizes.
Peng, I have a problem. Do me a favor. I want you to keep the wheel of luck for me.
He handed to Thang the incomplete set of mahjong tiles.
No one will want to steal the wheel for money, because of its missing season. The summer sun and Rama's radiant jewel I wish to keep personally for my prospective bride.
Thang sensed his brother's intention. He planned to follow, eavesdrop if possible, to gather facts to report to their father on the younger brother's suspicious activities and disappearances. It was undesirable to the family elders that Trung enter into a marital agreement with an untrustworthy woman. It had become feared he would lead the family to ruin before they could lay claim to Trung's newfound wealth. Trung remained resolute. His intention continued to seek out Su An and to marry her.
Trung has broken the wheel. The summer sun is now missing from the eternal wheel. It was a stupid decision on my part, but I allowed him to offer the title of the summer seasons as his matrimonial proposal.
If the wheel is not returned to Hugh for next year's game, we will forfeit our new property. Peng, you must see to it that the tile does not become misplaced. I am counting on you to do this, my son.
Trung vacated his sleeping place in one corner of the main room. He quietly slipped out the door. Trung troubled by worries over his fortune as he walked and watched the tanks, armored personnel carriers and trucks full of soldiers rolling past him en route to embattled provinces in the north. Depression alleviated itself by tender thoughts of Sutrang as he plodded on toward her house. The rain continued mixing with tears that streaked down his face. Before his astonished eyes a huge ball of orange fire and smoke suddenly billowed. From an explosion they surged skyward in an ominous cloud. Before entering the city a group of policemen eyed him suspiciously. They were checking every vehicle. With indignant, careless disregard Trung hopped over several fences and entered the city. Trung stopped an elderly man to ask what happened.
I heard an explosion. Where did it come from?
Guerrillas entered the city with explosives to attack the airbase. They could not get in, so they blew up an army truck. It killed several people, 2 soldiers, a girl on a bicycle, an old woman and a taxi driver.
As he stood in line at the bank, Trung counted seconds, waiting for an available teller. His headache brought on by use of opium and its derivative, heroin. Trung emerged from the bank building. The sun had come out, and its sudden revival warmed his back and aching shoulders. Squinting into the sun, he moved quickly and nervously along the street toward a large open marketplace. There he sought one of the many companions of his youth to share in part of the large reward caused by his gambling.
I heard one of your brothers blew up an American truck today.
I heard about it too.
Dung had been a witness to the bombing. The interlopers drew his attention as they passed. It seemed odd to Dung that this nondescript group should labor so strenuously beneath what appeared to be a light load of edibles and miscellaneous building materials. Tracking the swiftly moving party at a distance to avoid attention, Dung watched as they paused beside a big Army 5-ton that was idling in an intersection. Holding contempt for Americans at bay, Dung watched as the truck rolled down a road toward the airfield and exploded.
Dung, what have you been doing?
Trung looked at Dung, a former member of National Liberation Front. In the guerrilla army, he had deserted his command after forces he directed became expelled from the Saigon River area.
Got any bank today, Dung?
I don't, but I'll bet man does.
Laotians smuggled heroin across the border using military aircraft to fly directly from Vientiane, the capital. Trung and Dung walked from their meeting place to a dilapidated row of buildings a block away. The front of a building into which they entered served as a small grocery. A court to the rear of the store connected the grocery with sleeping and living area for the owner's family. This area composed of several rooms in a quadrangle with sliding door entrances made of glass and paper. Inside one of the rooms rested the black market racketeer, Men Kwok-ho, who sat preoccupied with an adding machine.
Man, do you have bang we can take to Saigon?
White mice are looking for who blew up that truck. The city is as hot as a dragon's exhalation. Not even my mother could find her way out with a firecracker.
Trung showed Man the money he'd been carrying. Men could not argue. As they left, Trung handed Dung a 10,000 piastre note, ordering him to stand watch over the entrance and tell him when Man returned with his contraband.
Come get me at the 7-Up Club. Watch him as a serpent watches a rat.
They had both run insignificant cargoes of black market contraband to Saigon for Man before. Their previous exploits were with post-exchange items like silk, cigarettes, and scotch, but nothing carrying the onerous penalty associated with the white powder Trung now intended to smuggle. The men were not unaware of penalties for smuggling. They became, however, ensnared in the clutches of an intense physical addiction that forced them to take unprecedented risks with the highly illegal substance. Trung returned to the marketplace where he hailed a taxi for the ride around one end of the airbase runway.
Straight ahead, around the end of the runway and bear to the left. I saw the explosion just as I was coming into town this morning. I heard shots and saw police chasing the men into the hills.
Reproachfully, Trung cursed himself for having entered into the conversation. It was early in the afternoon. Trung ascended a flight of stairs to Sue-Ann's room and knocked on the door.
Please come in. What brings you, most gracious of friends?
The pendant. Do you still have the pendant?
Do you think you cannot trust me with the most valued of your possessions?
She produced the mahjong tile, letting Trung hold it before continuing their conversation.
I'll square the debt with Mama Sanho as soon as I return from Saigon. Tonight I go to Saigon for black market Man. Tomorrow you will leave the nightclub.
I must see my mother.
She should accompany us to Hue when we take the tile to Tudam Pagoda.
It was a belief one adhering to Buddhist faith be admitted to blessedness of eternal contentment, after the completion of repetitive cycles of birth, sickness, old age, and death.
Each time I seek happiness in other people, hatred and resentment seem inevitably to overshadow those things that are good in them.
Why is that? You have obtained wealth and social position. Your family now has proprietorship of one of our most sought prizes. Haven't these pieces of good fortune brought you satisfaction? The force that affects most misery on humanity is greed, not returning to those in need, food, shelter and necessities to sustain life in the sick, homeless, and hungry. The second force is jealousy. Third is conceit, true in women, belief that the earth, stars in heaven, and all men on the planet revolve around them.
Keep the tile of the bonds' faith. I will return for it in the morning.
I want to tell my mother of my good fortune. She is hungry, poor and needs a place to live. Can you help her?
Agony involved in an accidental maiming of his brother in arms and ignorance that provoked that accident tore at Trung. He was confident Sue was sincere in saying she would accompany him to the city of Hue. Trung stood surveying traffic. Location of the missing tile was not knowledge he held uniquely to himself. Trung's worry over his partner bothered him. In the welcome coolness of the approaching evening he momentarily eyed the street before walking cautiously into the sunlight to hail a taxi.
Could you get a friend and myself to Colon after dark?
Not so difficult to get out of Bean Oa as to get in.
I might need to go to Colon at 9 o'clock. Where can I find you?
At the taxi cab alley. Ask for driver Nguyen.
Trung, cautious about entering the premises, Man had preferred to use Trung as a middleman in his negotiation. While Trung was with Su Trang at the house of Mama Sanho behind the 7-Up Club, he expected news from Trung. He was ill at ease over the partner, in making no showing. Trung sat between two booths. His smile caught Trung unexpectedly.
Why did you not come get me?
Man left his house after you departed and has not returned.
He might have returned by the back way.
Trung nervously knocked on the door to Man's room.
What do you want?
Trung Nguyen wants to know if you have acquired his goods.
They walked cautiously along the side of the building and into the market where Trung had left Trung standing only a few minutes earlier.
Follow me, master of the mahjong players. No tricks, I do not keep a bang with my wares. It hides in a garage by the road to North River. 150 grams of VNT on heroin. It is more than what you have already paid for. Another 100,000 piastres and all of it are yours.
Take Dung with you. When he returns with the 100 grams I have already paid for, we will discuss business further.
Taxi drivers talked of Trung.
What has winner of mahjong to do with black market men?
Nothing virtuous. I will speak to police about him.
Mr. Trang spun off. Nguyen waited for Trung. Inspector Tamalong NGO worked for police. Major Charles Tucker, United States Provost Marshal, struck his fist on a table in Tam's headquarters demanding action.
What do you expect me to find? A taxi says he picked up a fare. The passenger claimed to have seen the explosion.
Where is the driver?
I'm going now to find who the driver is.
I expect the Vietnamese High Command to talk to your witnesses. That is all, Inspector Ngo. We shall stay in touch.
Trung was nowhere in sight. Inspector Ngo spoke to Nguyen at request of Mr. Trang.
What makes you think this individual was witness to the bombing?
He disclosed to Mr. Trang he'd seen it. He also seemed insistent on leaving the city to go to Colon, even after I warned of the difficulty involved, should he wish to return.
Stop with your passenger when you see my officers signal at the roadblock on Route 1. As investigator in this case, I'll see the department makes it worth your time and effort.
Does man have my money?
No, I have the merchandise.
Trung and Dung were eager to determine the quality of their narcotics. They sought a tenement in an alley off the main road. A wizened old man greeted them.
Are you looking for a chamber for untying your souls?
Do not ask us stupid questions. We are not here to answer foolish riddles.
The attendant handed a long pipe. Trung extracted a small pinch of white powder from the paper package he concealed between his legs, put it in the pipe, and lit it. Trung fell into a transitory drugged euphoria. Reaching for Dung's shirt and cigarettes, Trung absently put it on, then began shaking his partner. Dung picked up Trung's shirt from where it had lain beside him. Trung stopped momentarily to speak with the old man who oversaw the front desk.
I want you to walk to Taxi Cab Alley. Ask for driver Nguyen. Tell him to come to your house.
Driver Nguyen.
I want you to come right back.
The elderly man stepped in front of the partition.
I'll return in 10 minutes.
They got in the taxi.
Lafayette Boulevard, Colon, Mr. Nguyen.
At Route 1, 2 officers stepped in front of them. A third approached.
Who is Trung Van Nguyen?
I'm Trung. Why are we being detained?
Inspector Ngo wishes to speak to you concerning People's Liberation Army.
Dung felt panic at mention of the Communists liberating force in South Vietnam. He had been an active member.
I am not a communist.
Both of you are to come to headquarters.
Dung pushed the door open and lurched into a line of vehicles. 2 policemen in front of the taxi ran after him, wrestling him to the ground on the other side of the road.
Stand in front of the car.
Dung's identification was in the shirt Trung wore. It had an authorization for living in the city, along with cigarettes and matches. A search of Dung revealed a cigarette lighter, change and statement from Trung's bank documenting his withdrawal that day.
One of these 2 is the man that High Command is looking for, as suspect and witness to this morning's bombing.
It was late evening.
I do not think you will get much out of them. One put up a fight.
The chief handed his evidence.
That one claims to be Trung Van Nguyen. The identification we found in his pocket says that his name is Dung Jai Pham. The other man had a receipt from a bank, a cigarette lighter, and some change. This is probably why he tried to escape.
The chief policeman pointed to the paper package inside the evidence bag.
Drug runners, we'll hold them until High Command arrives tomorrow from Saigon.
Trung woke to arrival of the investigators.
We're here to speak with Inspector Ngo concerning witnesses.
Inspector Ngo went to his desk, unlocked a drawer containing the plastic evidence bags.
Contact Major Tucker's office. Tell him that the investigation team's here. The man lying on the bench was holding a 10-entry authorization along with a large cache of drugs and money. We have not positively identified the man there on the floor, but we suspect one of the 2 to be Trung Van Nguyen, a witness. One man carried identification and drugs. Our files and signed affidavit from his pocket indicate his name is Dung Jai Pham.
Saigon police has record concerning Trung. He was arrested for involvement with United Buddhist Association some years ago.
Dung was now aware that his name had become held on a suspect list. Trung had become confused. He was not fully aware, up to that moment, of Inspector Ngo's mistaking his identity. Dung, who was lying quietly on the floor, entertained no such confusion.
How long have members of High Command been here?
A half hour. We are determining the identities of our 2 prisoners.
It is our hope that, with a minimum of coercion, one of these prisoners admit to having witnessed the bombing incident.
It is no good then. I need a witness who can positively identify the men, one who saw them plant the bomb.
We have presented both men escaping execution if they cooperate in this investigation. They know that the smuggling charge is enough to have them put to death.
Bradley returned to 7 Up Club same day Trung became arrested. Word from commanding officer arrived through the first sergeant. Stan and his platoon were to rest. Weary, he sat peering into light of the hallway entrance to the nightclub. Sue-Ann entered the front doorway and stood for a moment in the corridor. She scrutinized, looking for familiar faces. Upon contact with casual acquaintances or bed partners from nights past, Sue motioned to the available girls to sit with them and order drinks.
Stan, long times no see. Where have you been?
Mama Sans would lend girls she possibly used to work for her hundreds of dollars for clothes, furniture, food, and necessities. In agreement, she worked the club until the debt had become repaid. This was how Sue originally came to work in the club.
It's been 2 weeks, honey. Why you not come to my house? I am missing you all the time very much, my darling. Can you buy me something to drink?
Sure. Name it. Guess what?
What?
They gave me a 3-day pass.
Can we go to my house? I have something important to talk to you about.
Sure thing. Let's go.
A silence enveloped the room, broken by the sounds of chirping insects and a distant throbbing of helicopters.
Stan, darling, something extremely important has been given to me. Because of it, I am being asked to leave the city and the nightclub. I must go find my mother and tell her about it right away. It is very important to me.
I don't care about it right now. I can't think of anything except having you. What are you doing? Come back to me.
Sue extracted the golden pendant. It hung alluringly between her breasts.
I am ready.
They luxuriated in sensuous pleasure that rolled over them in waves of heated satisfaction. Then there was silence. Sue turned her attention momentarily from Bradley to Gohan's. She turned to say the Daimoku prayer. Namu Myoho Renshikyo, Namu Myoho Renshikyo, Namu Myoho Renshikyo rang through Sue's mind while Sergeant Bradley watched, trying to draw her attention back to himself.
What are you thinking?
I am praying to Gonz, the wisdom of Buddha, the way of his teaching. Would you like to try it?
She persuaded Stan to repeat her pious chant and, after some difficulty, he managed to imitate it.
The prayer is a vehicle.
You mean like an airplane?
Something like an airplane.
During his leave he luxuriated in attention Sue-Ann gave him. The time passed in protracted comfort for him, while Trung and Dung were en route to jail in Saigon. Sue kept vigilance during the morning hours. As time progressed, Sue had become discouraged over Trung's failure to return to her house. A hopeless sense of dejection pressed down on Trung at having failed in his intended effort to extricate Sue-Ann from her debt to the nightclub. Uniformed officers escorted Trung and Dung to a holding area that already became occupied by more than 24 prisoners. A fight broke out between two men toward the back of the cell. They quarreled, threatened each other angrily, and began assaulting one another. Sue sat quietly in her room listening to Stan as he slept.
Where did you get the pendant?
The pendant is a gift. Its keepers in who call the tile of the summer sun. It's a present from a man I'm supposed to marry. It represents a great deal of wealth when combined with the wheel of luck.
What is the wheel of luck?
Whoever holds the wheel of luck, from which the summer sun is absent, needs the wheel's missing segment, to redeem it. It must return to the keepers in who before the next Tet festival.
From the holding area of police headquarters, Trung peered out the barred window.
One of the men I spoke to earlier said you have tobacco.
I have been here a week. No one has entered this cell in the time with anything to start fire.
I was arrested for smuggling. My partner and I became jailed by a taxi driver while we were on our way to Colon.
That is unfortunate. You will probably be kept here for several days, like myself, before you are brought before a board of inquiry with arresting officers. It is the second time I got arrested this year. I got released the last time. The court kept the money I had stolen and nothing more had become said about it. Who knows, we might be doing time together.
Through afternoon and into early evening, Sergeant Bradley enjoyed the solitude of Sue's small room. Stan sat downstairs at the bar of 7-Up Club. Sue-Ann, following Mama Sanho's instructions, assisted waiting on tables and in overseeing the activities of other girls as men filtered into the club. A fight erupted on the dance floor. Soldiers angrily quarreled over the affections of one of the girls. Stan knocked one of the men sideways into the bar, breaking the man's jaw. As soon as Bradley heard the jaw crack, he hurriedly took Sue-Ann's hand. He led her out of the bar. A few minutes lapsed before military policemen arrived to close the club down for the evening. As night approached, a cloud of mosquitoes that hovered in the night air flew through the window into Trung's confinement area.
Tomorrow, I am going to visit my mother.
I don't understand why you want to go to Juan to visit your mother.
She is a special person to me. She is coming to live with me. I am going to marry Trung, and my mother is coming to live with us.
I wish you would get it out of your mind, the idea about leaving the nightclub. How do you expect to support your mother? This boyfriend of yours must be into some big money. What was it? A tournament jackpot, some kind of prize?
The lovers slept and dreamed. Sue awoke next morning. She decided to not wait to look for her mother.
Where are you going?
Leaving, I am going to be gone a few days.
She opened the jewel box and took out the talisman, handing it over to Stan.
Since you are going to be here, I want you to watch this for me. It is the only one of its kind. Do not show it to anyone.
Trung woke in torment on the floor of his cell when a strident guard, in a megaphone-like yell, called off the names of a half-dozen of the men confined in the jail cell.
Why did you get arrested?
I sold a confiscated newspaper.
I served under President Thu. He is an unprejudiced president as well as a proficient general. I have always been loyal to President Thu and his army.
Dung, his ears open and his mouth shut, paid careful attention while Trung discussed governmental management with the newspaper salesman.
President Thu ignored his vice president, even prevented his being nominated to run against him. Many people in our country support the vice president. Dung Ja Pham, this way.
Bailiffs led the prisoners down a flight of stairs across a paved parking lot and into a courtroom.
Try Van Le. Mr. Lee, you are accused of selling material which has been viewed to be dangerous to the national security. Guilty.
I see grounds for a trial.
I agree. Fined 15,000 piasters. Hun Quoc Vo accused of robbery. How do you plead? Innocent. I hold you in pre-trial confinement. Trung Van Nguyen and Dung Jia Pham.
The two men reluctantly stood to face the magistrate.
You are both accused of smuggling and treasonous activity. How do you plead?
Dung immediately entered a plea of innocence. The judge noted this plea under the name of Trung Van Nguyen.
I am loyal to the Saigon government.
The judge was in no way sympathetic toward accused drug smugglers.
In view of material evidence and because of prior police records which show your complicity endangering national security, you are both to be held in Tan Heap Central Detention Center until you are brought to trial.
My name is Nguyen, Trung Van. You have made a mistake. He is Pham, Dung Jia. I am Trung.
No mistake.
Trung and Dung became issued baggy grey prisoners' uniforms on the bus that traveled south, first to Saigon and then north to Xuan Lac on National Route 1. Sue and Trang was uneasy.
Excuse me, are you going to Saigon?
No, I get out before.
Would you mind changing seats with me? I am sure that you would prefer to sit by the window. I am afraid the way some of the men in back of the bus are watching me.
The bus continued. Sue disembarked and inquired the whereabouts of her mother. An old neighbor led Sue to her.
Your mother's been sick for a week. Doctors say emphysema. It is worse.
Sue walked anxiously to her mother's resting place, where Mrs. Trang reclined uncomfortably on her side on a cot.
Sue Ann, I am so glad to see you.
Are you well enough to travel? I have good news. Trung Van Nguyen, winner from last year's gambling tournament, has asked me to marry him. He assured me you can live with us.
Mrs. Trang's fever grew worse, inflaming her time-worn body. A sense of entrapment and dread held her. Sue sat with Mrs. Trang's head in her lap. Air passed painfully between the old woman's whitened lips, as her weakened pulse faded and became imperceptible. As the inexorable rain pounded on the roof of the shelter, the old mother expelled one last breath and then breathed no longer. Nearly paralyzed with grief, Sue Ann carefully folded her parents' arms over her breast and then began to weep. Trung's older brother waited and watched for his return. It had been 3 days since the family had seen Trung. Thang took up a position across the street from 7-Up Club and began to watch the alleyway to Sue Ann's house. The whereabouts of the Tile of the Summer Sun and his younger brother remained a mystery. Bradley extracted from its box the talisman Sue Ann had stored in elaborate elegance. He placed it in his shirt pocket. Thang caught a fleeting glimpse of Stan at the top of the stairs. Two girls eyed Thang intently while he identified himself and then questioned the bartender.
I have not seen him for several days. A lucky man, he is the best mahjong player in Saigon. Su Trang is not at work tonight. Mama Sanho says she will be back tomorrow. Sue is in Juan Lac.
Thang returned to the street in front of the nightclub and waited. At Dan Hia prison, Trung sat cheerlessly. Trung watched the other men lying on the floor. Soon the agonizing tentacles of addiction tightened about him. The next morning Sue went to the medic's tent.
Why did you not come to get us last night? You should have told us about the high fever.
I only need 1,500 piastres to take the bus back to Bien Hoa. Please see that my mother is cremated in the Buddhist tradition and given a bonze's blessing. I will return for her ashes when I can afford to come see you again. If you are able, please bring her ashes to me at the 7-Up Club in Bien Hoa.
Your mother will receive a blessing.
I require lodging. For the hours of curfew.
You need a room for a few hours. No peace settlement becomes reached. President Du is going to drag us into final conflict with Hanoi's government. I am afraid.
Americans' withdrawal is an act of cowardice. We have bled together for too long to see the Americans retreat. The North will be like a wounded water buffalo, wounded by the Western hunters' bullets and left to stomp on us in its agony. Yes, and unless we find some cohesion our government will fail.
How was your pass?
You seem happy.
Our unit's standing down. We are turning over our equipment to ARV and we might be back in the States soon.
I knew President Nixon was serious about troop withdrawals, but I never expected anything this fast. This country has been living on American credit for too long. If it were not for foreign aid, Saigon's government never would get off its ass. The only people getting anything out of the aid money we put into this government are a few fat rats and politicians.
Stan took off his shirt with the talisman and hid it in his footlocker. Thang said goodbye to the hotel and approached taxi.
I am the brother of Trung Van Nguyen. Where is he?
Inspector Renshio arrested your brother for smuggling. I heard it from Mr. Trang. It happened earlier this week, same day terrorists blew up an army truck in front of the airbase.
Thank you.
Thang was painfully conscious of his younger brother's negligence and its consequent threat to the Nguyen family's newfound prosperity.
Your brother was identified as accomplice to a suspected activist turned in with drugs and money.
Both men claimed the same name, your brother's name. There is also the fact of your brother's having been a witness to a terrorist attack.
We are loyal to President Du. I need to talk to my brother and convince authorities of his loyalty.
Talk with authorities in Saigon, then.
Did Bradley leave?
Yes, a man came looking before your sergeant went out who said he was Trung's brother. Have you seen Trung?
He said he'd pay the 1,000,000 piastres I owe.
Mrs. Ho looked at Sue skeptically. She doubted an assertion that she was to be reimbursed by an admirer for the debts of one of her girls.
The young man never returned. Get ready for work.
Sue became confused. Her mother's death, the irritation displayed by Mama San Ho, and now the missing talisman bothered her. Mrs. Ho walked into the room. She carried an expensive dress she bought while Sue was in Xuanlook.
Wear this tonight, it's very becoming.
Thank you.
Thang arrived at Independence Palace in Saigon. A policeman who was standing at the entrance watched him. Thang approached the guard and addressed him with confidence.
I am here to see Judge B. My name is Thang. I wish to speak with the judge about my brother Trung Van, who became mistakenly accused of treason.
Dat Kak Bue was a magistrate of the Saigon court to whom Thang became referred by Inspector Ngo. The guard, impressed by Thang's forcefulness, picked up a telephone and called the office.
Mr. Nguyen to see you, concerning his brother. There was evidence pointing to treasonous activity coupled with the smuggling charge. Why has bail not been set in his case? A man called Pham was named by a convicted National Liberation Front activist. Officially he cannot be released, but if you can arrange to raise say 2,000,000 piastres, it might become arranged. If so, I will help you, Mr. Nguyen. I might be able to raise half the money, but I'll have to see Trung before I can come up with more.
Come back in 2 days, then, and we will talk. I am Trung. That other man is the activist you are seeking. Attaching this incorrect identity shackle that I'm wearing was the result of my, accidentally, having put on the wrong shirt. I am only a miserable addict. All this trouble has resulted from my having won the Underworld's tournament of mahjong players during last Tet festival. My family is now the possessor of the Wheel of Luck. My brother Thang has the mahjong set that I won in the festival.
Trung is being held incommunicado. The judge demands 2,000,000 piastres. Can we get that much from our holdings? Trouble is I have no authority to draw from the funds. The only thing that we can do is to borrow money against the farm, which is our own personal property, or sell property already owned by the family before Trung's negligence brought us all this trouble. Then we'll have to borrow money on our property. I will take care of speaking with the bankers, but you will have to authorize the loan. I can only accept this payment as partial compensation for obtaining Trung's freedom. Your brother, with whom I have just recently spoken, brought a more important matter to my attention.
More than his brother's freedom, Thang desired Trung's knowledge as to the exact whereabouts of the missing mahjong tile.
You, sir, are here to see Ung Jafam.
No, I am authorized to visit my brother, Trung Van Nguyen.
The guard double-checked the authorization. It contained Dung's name and Judge Biz's signature.
Thang, you found me. The police made a mistake.
Your folly may be beyond my resolve. You spilled information to a judge concerning your fortune during Tet Festival. What have you done with the missing tile? As long as the summer sun is absent, the wheel of luck has no redeemable value. Underworld will be looking for that missing tile as well as the judge.
The summer sun is in a coffer suit Trang keeps inside a wardrobe in her room. The charge of treason against me is completely false. You know that.
I am afraid you have sealed your fate mentioning mahjong to a crooked judge. That man's greed can keep me from securing your release.
Mrs. Leong traveled from Xuanlak to Suan's room at the 7-Up Club. Mylin bore the funeral urn that contained the mortal remains of her deceased friend. With heartfelt gratitude, Suan thanked her mother's friend.
I am so grateful to you, Mrs. Luong. I can't tell you how much. You show the light of great wisdom, and I hope that it will always be with you.
Loss of her mother made Su bitter. Thang returned by bus to Bian Ho. Thang recognized driver Trang from previously conducted business in the market. Because of having spoken to one of driver Trang's colleagues earlier when he was searching for Trung, Thang knew that the cab driver had divulged to Police Inspector Tam Long Ngo the information that had resulted in his brother's arrest.
Driver Trang.
Yes?
Tell me about Trung Van Nguyen. The other drivers told me you reported him to police.
Yes, I did. My best friend, Mr. Tu, died. Trung mentioned he had seen the bomb go off. That is what I reported.
What else did you see? The man you reported was my brother. Did you see him speaking to anyone else?
Driver Nguyen and I saw Trung Van and another man talk with Gangster Man.
While Thang was searching in Bian Ho for Su Trang, Dat Bui was attempting to formulate a plan whereby he lay his hands on the valuable mahjong tile.
My office is seeking release of an individual. We know who the activist is. The man in charge of the arrest was Inspector Ngo. The reason for my call is this: if my office should succeed in establishing the identity of the activist bringing about his conviction and execution, will your office guarantee any subsequent reward be paid to me rather than Inspector Ngo?
Thang waited patiently for some sign of Man Kwok-ho, who had figured heavily in Trung's smuggling activities. Thang lunged, knocking Man off his feet and backwards onto the floor of the storeroom.
Not a sound.
I gave the drugs to Dung Pham.
How much did Trung give you for drugs?
350,000 piastres.
Thang walked casually back towards Second Market to search for Driver Nguyen.
Trung was arrested several days ago. Driver Trang told me you were the one who delivered Trung to police. Is this true?
Inspector Ngo wanted to question them about the bombing. Trung told Driver Trang he'd seen the explosion in which Trang's friend, Mr. Tu, was killed. Inspector Ngo ordered me to deliver the two men. I was following instructions by the inspector.
Thang, ignorant of the ineptitude in confused identities, walked to the club to look for Suan Trang. Only Judge Bui suspected this error. Despite the earlier promise of troop withdrawals, his unit was preparing for field duty again.
What is it now? North Vietnamese units look like they are preparing for an offensive. It might keep us on alert for a couple weeks. I've received no word yet, but orders for troop withdrawals are in effect with other units. We might be in the States in 9 weeks. Our alert status is yellow. We stay in garrison.
With occurrence of her mother's death, Su no longer looked upon Turung's offer as fully advantageous. Evening wore on, Su asked for time off.
I go to pray for my mother, only for a few hours.
Mama Sanho was in a tolerant mood. Because of the scarcity of customers, she agreed to the request. Mrs. Ho gave Su 200 piastres as a donation to the priests.
Light a candle in the temple for my poor dead husband.
Thang made his way to top of the steps that led to Suan's room. A padlock on the door offered little resistance. Silently he searched the wardrobe his brother described. Disappointment filled Thang. He found it empty. As he moved back to the wardrobe to replace the coffer, he accidentally knocked one of the handles on the amphora containing ashes from Su's deceased mother. The porcelain urn fell with a loud crash to the floor, breaking and spilling its contents haphazardly over one of the rugs. Thang walked away from the 7-Up Club, angry at not finding the golden mahjong tile.
I am worried about my friend Dung. He doesn't object to our wearing wrong name bracelets. He must have something to hide from the authorities. Why would he offer no argument over their mistake in our identities?
I have seen your friend speaking to members of the North Vietnamese militia. It is possible that your friend has had some activity with the National Liberation Front and wants to hide his real identity.
Trung transferred from prison to military high command. Dat Kak Bui wanted to confirm suspicion Trung aroused concerning the Wheel of Luck. Judge Bui had desire to obtain the gambler's wheel but feared retaliation from gangster factions at odds with the established government, should he cause the confiscation of their highly valued property. He decided to worry about that later. Displeased by his futile search for the lost mahjong tile, Thang returned with wearisome sorrow to the family's farm.
The judge assured me he'd secure Trung's release.
Did you see Trung, talk with him?
Yes, they compounded the smuggling charge with treasonous affiliation to the People's Liberation Army.
Without the tile of the summer sun we are doomed. We can probably keep this farm, but annuities to our family will end at beginning of the new year.
I've taken steps toward your brother's release.
Judge Bui used his knowledge to alter the categorical specification under which Trung's name listed on the prison files.
The bail is 10 million piastres.
The judge gave false information concerning required bail to exact $30,000 from the Nguyen family.
I will raise the money. I will return with Trung's bail in 3 days.
If that man has any pertinent facts regarding the death of my 2 soldiers, I want the information. How do you explain the tenantry authorization found on your person? A convicted activist pointed you out as his superior just before he died.
It was a mistake, please. It was a mistake.
Nothing convinces me you're Trung Nguyen.
Ask my brother.
He claims you are a liar. Tell me the location of the mahjong tiles.
It is hidden in our barn. The tiles hide in our silo beneath grain that we use to feed cattle.
One of the men that claims to be your brother insists he was winner at last festival. Enough about the tournament. You promised to get him out of prison. I hold you personally responsible. Your brother will be released or my office will refund his bail. There better be no problem.
Peace talks proliferated. Promise of unilateral release caused sudden hope. Several men set out were handed 2,500 piastres and told to return to a command under which they serve. In exchange, North Vietnam released Americans who, reportedly, were missing in action. Dung leapt with excitement as he set out on the road to Bien Ho, giving thanks to the gods for the ineptitude of the authorities who failed to identify him correctly, and to the captors who so carelessly released him. Thang paid Judge Bui the 10 million piastres.
How are you feeling?
Please let me out.
I will release you when you have given me more information.
The Wheel of Luck has no monetary value without the missing season.
Dat Bui talked with Tamengio.
I think it would be advantageous to both of us if you were to conduct the search of his family's property.
The tournament is illegal.
I will pay 5 million piastres to your precinct for delivery of those tiles.
I will take your offer into consideration.
The gambling tiles became found and confiscated.
Judge, we have the mahjong tiles.
How many pieces were there? The entire set.
143.
Now if you would be so good as to bring the tiles to my office, I am sure that it will be well worth your while.
The judge observed the summer sun was missing. Sue went to the front entrance of the air base and tried unsuccessfully to get in touch with Stan Bradley. The guards at the gate denied her admittance.
How many days until I can see him?
All we can do is call his orderly room. Nobody can get out of the gate without permission from company commander. Those are our orders.
Tell Sergeant Bradley Sue Trang was here to see him.
When Sue returned to her room, police awaited.
Be so kind as to cooperate. We are searching for a rectangular gold tile on a silver chain, approximately 6 centimeters high and 4 centimeters wide.
Leave my apartment. Get out. I have no knowledge of the contraband you describe.
Sue fled downstairs. Judge Bui watched from the passenger's side of a taxi motor running. The judge jammed his left foot down, wrenching the steering. He accelerated past her and swung around. Unable to halt her headlong flight, she smashed into the car, her forehead cracking a window. She fell to the ground, her head jarring against the pavement. moment and she moved no more. Prophecy of her dreams fulfilled themselves. Passers-by began to gather, their curiosity drawing them magnetically near.
How could you let them confiscate the Wheel of Luck? Our cause is lost. It will do us no good even if Trung goes free now. Inspector Ngio's police knew the exact location of the mahjong tiles. The next time I see Trung I will personally remove his inane head from his shoulders.
Violence by voters over the rigged elections and a threatened offensive by Viet Cong forces might keep us on alert for 2 weeks. Our status is yellow, so we've got to stay prepared to move out the minute it's changed to red.
After his platoon leaders had gathered, the senior non-commissioned officer further briefed them on their unit's final withdrawal from Vietnam.
I received confirmation on our stand down. We start turning in personal equipment end of the week. Our company timetables to depart from Tan Son Hut Airport in Saigon the 19th of September. Our weapons and equipment go to Da Nang and then return to the States after we shove off. We are being reassigned to the 197th Infantry Brigade at Fort Benning. It is imperative I speak with Dung Jai Pham. I need to have Mr. Pham paroled to my custody.
You will have a problem getting to military high command. There have been instances of violence in front of the detention center.
He can identify a man Inspector Ngo is holding on charges of cooperation and terrorism. Without your prisoner, the terrorist might go free.
Judge Buet planned to bring Trung to Bien Ho to force his assistance in a second search of Suan's room, to find the missing mahjong tile.
I must find that missing mahjong tile.
The mahjong tiles are government property.
I am fully aware of the procedures concerning the protection of national treasures.
That is true. Nevertheless, I will help you only if you consent to our sharing any official citation or commendation that might be coming offered after you recover them.
We will go and secure the release of our prisoner tonight, and then return to Miss Strang's apartment.
Along the main entrance to the command center, irate crowds gathered. Press of the crowd relaxed enough to allow the police car to roll through and stop inside the gate of the command center. The judge and inspector got out of the car and entered the building. Communicating with Trung, who was sitting huddled in a corner of his tiny cell, was going to be difficult. Narcotic withdrawal, hunger and a general debilitation resulting from his imprisonment left Trung virtually incapable of any rational communication. He shook pathetically as they helped him to his feet. Officials worried his weakened state might prevent finding the tile. Worries were no less by sounds of the angry mob. A man with a handgun aimed and fired 2 shots. One bullet lodged in the inspector's automobile. The other struck Trung directly in the temple, killing him instantly. Everyone dropped to the ground to avoid flying bullets, except for the armed demonstrator, who took to his heels. Most of the demonstrators joined the assassin in flight and enabled the police to rescue Ngo and Buet. The inspector was still unaware that it was Trung Van Nguyen who died. Trung's death had complicated matters immensely for Dat Buet. Trung died proclaiming allegiance to the government he implicated himself betraying. Sergeant Bradley mustered his platoon at the airbase's central issuing facility 5 days after his company was on yellow alert. Stan shook off his usual reserve and smiled in concurrence with the enthusiasm over their unit's stand down.
We are finally getting out of this lousy war.
Stan showed guards his port call and hailed a taxi to 7-Up Club. He looked for Sue, in the club and in her room. He failed to find her and noticed the premises under surveillance. He walked down the balcony to Sue's room. One of Inspector Ngo's men, a man also in Judge Buet's confidence, eyed him suspiciously. It was Judge Buet's intention, having conducted another thorough but fruitless search of the premises, to allow nothing under Police Inspector Ngo's administration to escape his attention. Stan nodded to the policeman at the foot of the stairs. Noting the military uniform, the officer asked for identification. Stan worried over being detained. Sue's talisman was in a pocket of his jacket. He returned to his taxi, disappointed over failure to find Sue Ann. She had been such a source of support and comfort to him during his last 8 months in Southeast Asia. He knew that he would miss her warmth and smile. He had a sense of foreboding, regarding why he had not found her at the club. Millions of refugees streamed south to Saigon. The people desperately attempting to leave the country as communist armies closed in resulted in a havoc of almost unbelievable proportions.
We had to mortgage our farm. You had Police Inspector Ngo steal my family's property. You claim to have released a man you thought was my brother Trung, Now you say that there was a mistake.
You are a patriotic man. Can you not realize damage the mahjong tournaments have done to our country's financial condition?
With threats, Thang stormed out of the office. Those qualified to leave Vietnam were unable. The judge found himself in a position of attempting bribery.
Because of the office you held under the Thu administration, it will be very hazardous to remain in the country. That is why I am going to give priority in authorizing your departure.
He hastily packed a few of his important possessions, foremost of which was the unique set of gambling tiles. He was soon on a plane and on his way out of Saigon. As Da Nang, Thang's unit evacuated by small boats, in attempt to move south and concentrate a defense, the group did not fare well, nor did the thousands of refugees afloat off Cam Ranh, swamped in heavy seas. A large cargo ship, sponsored and provisioned by various relief organizations in the United States, offered to evacuate the Marines across the South China Sea to the Philippines. Thang Nguyen and Dat Kak Bu obtained, within 2 months of one another, immigration approval into America. Bu is settled in San Francisco, Thang in Jacksonville, Florida. Thang had no knowledge of Bu's location. While driving through Florida, he glimpsed a car. The sedan wasn't noteworthy. The driver was. Thang had seen the driver. Perplexed, Thang followed the car and racked his brain to remember. Then suddenly it came to him. He had seen that driver's face in Vietnam, in Bien Ho, outside the 7-Up Club on the night that he'd ransacked Suan Trang's room in search of the tile of the summer sun. With the knowledge of Bradley's license, Thang was able to determine where Stan lived. He felt sure that this ex-sergeant that he had seen in Bien Ho was a lead in finding his brother Trung and possibly a key to recovering the missing talisman. His feeling was so strong, and his attachment to his life in Jacksonville so inconsequential, that he disregarded his limited finances, packed his meager belongings and moved to Columbus, Georgia. There he intended to maintain a surveillance of Bradley. Thomas Bradley was a young man who possessed a natural understanding of his peers. He had many friends with whom he philosophized about youthful ideals. He tended to see good points in his companions, and generally tried to imitate their virtues. Tom coasted up to the Bradley house on his bicycle.
I need to use the telephone, Mom. Expecting any calls?
No, go ahead, Tom. And by the way, Nancy called. She wanted you to call her back.
Hello, Nancy. Are we still going out? I'll pick you up at 7. Bye.
Nancy Fairchild was an alluring teenager. Linda Blair Bradley, Stan and Peggy's daughter, was born while her father was a drill instructor at Fort Ord in California. Linda left home in Georgia to return to California. She secured a job as a teller in one of the many banks that spawned themselves by the Golden State. Unlike her father in most ways, Linda had become impressed by social prestige and trappings associated with it. She had no particular desire for family life, a husband or children. Beside her bed was a book containing a list of men's phone numbers. To manipulate the suitors, she only needed to pick up the phone. Linda gave fleeting thought to the top drawer of the nightstand and a jewel box containing an expensive wristwatch, a cocktail ring, a pair of gold earrings and a gold and diamond pendant, a parting gift from her father when she made her move to California. Engraved on the back of the pendant was a teaching Buddha, and on the front a diamond tile of the summer sun. The phone rang but she ignored it. She stepped out the door to the carport. She enjoyed her car, a rebuilt 68 Mustang with manual transmission and 289 cubic inch V8 engine. It ran extremely well. Above all, Linda was in love with her independence. She checked the rear view mirror. Thoughts became clearer as she increased speed. Linda managed to find a space in the underground parking lot. She locked the car doors, then rode the elevator up to street level and crossed the street to the courthouse. Steve Brewster stood, engrossed in a portfolio. Linda gathered from the assistant district attorney to her arrival that he did not recognize her. She stood in the corner where she could get a better glimpse of the folder and the location on the bookshelf from which it became taken. She needed a plan by which she could strike up an acquaintance with him. She walked unobtrusively to one of the shelves within view of her quarry and pulled down a document that dealt with the county's banking system. A lengthy line of impatient people waited at the service desk.
Why, Mr. Brewster, what a delightful surprise it is to meet you here. You probably don't remember me. I'm Linda Bradley. I think we met at the bank where I work.
Nancy Fairchild brushed her hair and checked her makeup one last time before she walked downstairs to greet her date. She was wearing a lightweight, translucent summer blouse covering a black velvet bra, tight brown slacks that zipped up the side, and soft pink tennis shoes.
Want to go to a drive-in?
Sure, that'll be fine.
Tonight was like a crazy ritual, Nancy thought, watching kids playing on swing sets under the enormous white screen. Tom held his arm around her shoulders while she rested with her back against his chest.
What did you think about old Mr. Bremen's algebra class?
I couldn't pass the class if my dad gave me a brand new Cadillac. That's why I'm into art and home economics. At least that means something to me. That math, man, it's really too much for me.
They embraced, on the front seat of the car, kissing passionately in mutual urgency. They tumbled feverishly on the front seat of the Chevrolet, sweating in delirious agitation. Tom slid himself on top of her, and as she winced momentarily in pain, surprise slowly forced himself into the moist prominence between her legs. Thrusting slowly and with ever-increasing vigor, he ejaculated in climactic accompaniment to Nancy's cries of heated excitement before they collapsed in exhausted gratification. The thrill of promiscuous adventure titillated each delicate pore of her skin, neatly resting her back against his muscular chest.
Do you believe in heaven? Do you believe that when we die we go to some kind of hereafter?
I've imagined and fabricated inside my mind what it would be like. I'm sure if I were to go there, it would be completely different from what I'd imagined. Maybe heaven is just some kind of an eternal springtime where nature is warm, providing and unresistant to things that grow.
Nancy preferred not to stir up suspicions by arriving home late.
What time do you think it is?
11:30.
They cast anxious eyes toward upstairs bedroom windows, but only darkened portals stared back at them reassuringly. Tom opened the car door as quietly as he could and then walked up the steps with Nancy to her front porch. They lingered for several minutes in a single, impassioned kiss before reluctantly breaking their long embrace. The closeness they felt was a warm, inseparable fondness. It was after midnight when Tom arrived home. Getting out of his father's car, he walked into the house through the front door. Tom attempted not to be rude or confrontational as he answered his father. He was afraid of him. Somewhat, albeit respectful as well. Tonight Tom did not want to become questioned about his evening's activities, for fear of disclosing his drinking. He was in no mood for a heart-to-heart talk with Stan and hoped that the old man would return to bed without further inquiry. Thang moved to Georgia and started a martial arts class. To obtain information about his brother, Stan Bradley, and the mahjong tile, Thang questioned people. By coincidence, one of Thang's students was a friend of Thomas Bradley. The student persuaded Tom to join. As Thang got to know Tom, he asked the boy about his father.
My father was in a long time. It's hard to spend 20 years without killing people when a war is on.
It is hard not to kill people in war,
Thang agreed, masking his curiosity. Thang sketched a drawing of the talisman.
Have you seen a design like this?
Looks like a pendant my father gave to my sister Linda when she graduated. He told her, he got it in Vietnam.
Thang questioned Tom about his sister, where she lived, what she looked like and what she did for a living. Thang read in a newspaper an advertisement to Vietnamese immigrants who might be in need of legal help. The ad referred the name Buick. It was a common name in Vietnam. He dialed the San Francisco phone number.
This is Thang Nguyen. I am trying to locate my brother.
What information can you give me concerning the missing tile?
The daughter of an army sergeant has it. What assurance do I have you will contact my family if I tell you more?
Not much. Our only communication is with the communist government in Hanoi. They are in no way helpful.
You must contact my family. The name of the girl you want is Linda Bradley. She lives in Monterey.
You say the girl lives in Monterey?
I believe so. I will stay in touch.
It was Thang's last attempt at negotiation. Next would be force. Thang planned. Linda Bradley bumped against Steve Brewster.
Pardon me, you seem to be in a hurry.
Were you waiting in line?
I'm Steve Brewster. Do I know you? You look familiar.
My name is Linda.
Could I buy you some coffee? Do you work around here?
No, I work for a bank, but I'm on vacation right now.
I work in the DA's office. Does that sound impressive?
Eventually she maneuvered him into asking if he might drive her back to her apartment.
Can I get you a drink?
How about a martini?
We need vermouth. I'll run to the grocery.
Steve heard a noise in the bedroom. Two men, Judge Buer knew by first name only, Jiang and Ju, searched Linda's closets. As he moved toward the bedroom to investigate, the thieves heard him coming. Jiang drew a knife. Buer's hirelings moved, wrathful and empty-handed, into Linda's living room, leaving the body of the young attorney in the bedroom, sprawled across the nightstand which contained Linda's jewelry box. Linda returned from the grocery.
Steve, are you alright?
She walked to the body. Seeing blood on the carpet, she dialed 911. A paramedic team dispatched to Linda's apartment. Minutes after medics arrived, so did police. The police waited patiently for the woman to recover her composure before they started inquiry.
How long have you known this man?
Just met. I asked him up here for a drink.
His identification shows that he works for our district attorney's office. Did you know that?
Yes, he told me that.
After medics had taken Steve's body, Linda searched the premises with the investigators. Although the rooms and closets became ransacked, nothing seemed stolen. The jewelry box was in her nightstand. It had not become opened. Stan looked out the living room window. There was a new dent in the fender of his Chevrolet, sitting in the driveway. Tom's doing, no doubt. Stan struggled between an amused tolerance for his young son's shenanigans and an inclination to hit him. The urge to drink inclined. The telephone began to ring.
Is everything okay, honey?
Dad, I'm so scared. A man was killed in my apartment last night.
Don't worry. Have you notified the police?
I found him dead. Someone stabbed him to death in my bedroom.
Stan became struck with memory of the young Vietnamese man, Thang Nguyen, who had accosted him several months before at that gas station in Jacksonville. Hadn't he expressed an unusual interest in Linda's pendant? Maybe there was some connection between that man and the murder. Linda returned to her apartment, collected some of her possessions into several suitcases before heading east toward Interstate 40 in her red Mustang. On the way she began scolding herself. What a fool she had been to ask Steve to her apartment. Why did she act so damned pretentiously? What was wrong with her? As Linda drove, she frequently glanced in her rear vision mirror. There was a big blue Lincoln back there. It had been there for quite some time, following her determinedly at a distance. Linda drove back to her parents' home in Georgia with worried determination, stopping, infrequently, to rest. During the entire trip thus far she had watched the blue Lincoln behind her with trepidation. On occasion she had attempted to dodge its pursuit, but each time that it seemed she had evaded her pursuer, the blue car reappeared, like the shadow of a cat stalking her Mustang. Tom walked up the steps to Nancy's house. Tom was now adamant in his determination to escape his father's dominance. Tom divulged to Nancy his intention of moving. Linda arrived at the parents' house, in her luggage-laden Mustang. She had been in frequent contact with Stan during her long drive. Stan and Peggy were still hungry, for all the details of their daughter's troubles in California.
I don't know if I am going back to California. It's too scary now. Maybe I should get a job here in Georgia and stay close to home.
Assisted by her brother, she removed her luggage and other personal belongings from the Ford. He noticed she carried her jewelry box and asked her about the pendant.
I was talking to my instructor in martial arts. He's Vietnamese. He described that pendant Dad gave you almost exactly. Do you think I could borrow it? I'd like to show it to him. It'd be for just one afternoon.
Is it important? You know it was a special graduation present. It is pretty valuable. You lose it, you buy it.
The next morning, Wednesday, Tom walked into a pawn shop on Victory Drive with Linda's pendant in his pocket.
I need a loan.
Tom pocketed pawn ticket and money. To the owner of the house trailer he paid $215 for his rent. Judge Buer's ineffectual hirelings Jiang and Ju returned to San Francisco empty-handed. Jiang went immediately to report to the judge the results, or lack of results, of their nefarious quest. He did not mention to Dak that he had killed Steve Brewster during the search of Linda Bradley's apartment. Buer was furious over their failure and berated the hapless Jiang.
I want you to abduct the girl. Once we get her, we'll find the tile. Let me know as soon as you have accomplished it. Don't bungle the job.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars became offered for the complete mahjong set by an outlawed army leader in France forced from Saigon after President Diem's purges against him. The judge became determined that fortune would become his regardless how he came to acquire it. Linda became perturbed over her brother's absence and his failure to bring back her pendant.
He told me they were getting married. Tom can be awfully scatterbrained sometimes.
She frowned, thinking not so much of her brother's marital plans as she was of his possession of her pendant.
V insists we kidnapped the girl. The syndicate became displeased over my killing that dumb lawyer, Brewster. They warned of further bloodshed if we do not follow instructions.
What is wrong with Dad?
He's been like that ever since he went to see a psychologist at the Health and Welfare Department 2 weeks ago.
The two girls were longtime friends. Even though Linda was several years older, Nancy acted both surprised and pleased to see her.
Linda, Tom told me you were back. It is certainly great to see you again. How was sunny California?
Not great. I guess Tom told you that someone murdered a man in my apartment? I can't tell you right now.
Tom didn't fill me in on any of the details.
I will later. Right now I need to find Tom. He borrowed a pendant of mine, and hasn't returned it. Do you know where he is? He's living in a trailer off Victory Drive.
Linda parked between trailers. Tom's neighbor parked so the Mustang's exit became blocked. Ju and Jiang seized the circumstance to abduct Linda. Jiang moved swiftly and quietly approached Linda. Ju drove slowly, stealthily behind his partner. Linda turned, saw the blue Lincoln, and tried to scream. Before she could cry out, Jiang grabbed her and clapped a powerful hand over her mouth. Linda struggled as he wrenched her into the car. Nancy was witness.
Someone kidnapped my boyfriend's sister.
Police dispatched to the scene.
I spent time in Vietnam. I brought back a gold pendant. Who killed the lawyer in California was looking for it.
Stan continued to detail for the police the significance of the pendant.
Now I'm afraid Linda may have been kidnapped and it had something to do with that piece of jewelry.
The telephone rang, composed of a computerized voice, telling Stan to carry the mahjong tile with him and wait for one of Buey's men to contact him. Linda screamed 3 times before her captors grabbed her. She dangled from a balcony railing but was no match for 2 men's strength. Jiang grabbed her arm and, with Ju's help, dragged her inside the hotel room. She continued to scream until the 2 men bound and gagged her. Several of the hotel's occupants heard her cries. They ignored them, attributing it to a domestic quarrel they did not wish to become involved in. Ju and Jiang bided their time, waiting further instructions from Judge Buey. Stan searched for the pendant. He returned to police.
Someone kidnapped our daughter. They want a pendant in exchange for Linda. It belonged to a girlfriend in Vietnam. She told me it was a prize her boyfriend won. I didn't pay attention at the time. I thought it was a contrivance to get me to help her get out of the country, when the South Vietnamese government seemed to be falling apart. Do you have any idea what happened to that pendant?
She loaned it to Tom to show his martial arts instructor.
Efforts of the Columbus police in locating Linda proved to be unproductive.
Someone is blackmailing my father.
I didn't think it would come to this. It's not impossible. Do you know what became of the pendant that I mentioned?
You mean the pendant that my dad gave to my sister?
In Vietnam that pendant became called the Tile of the Summer Sun. It belonged to gangsters in Saigon. Some members of the underworld, located in France, have posted a substantial reward for its return. They want that pendant. I have the pendant. I know where it is. I'll get it and give it to you. Find my sister Master Nguyen. When I see Linda again and know she is safe, I'll give you your tile, whatever it is, that golden rectangle with the diamond on it.
Tom hurried to work. Once he received his paycheck, he intended to redeem the pendant from the pawn shop and turn it over to Master Nguyen. Of course, he had originally promised that he would return it to Linda, but now it appeared that Linda's safety was more important. Peggy borrowed money, against equity in their house.
Why did you give that pendant to Linda? You knew who it belonged to. It was the property of that Vietnamese woman.
When I left Vietnam, I didn't think it had a significance. You didn't have to borrow money on the house. I intended to give the extortionists what they want, as soon as I talk with Tom and find the pendant. You know very well that this house is what I have worked for all my life. You didn't ask my opinion about borrowing money on it.
Fang had been concentrating on one subject, the whereabouts of the unscrupulous Judge Buey, the man he must destroy, the man who must somehow become made the instrument of his own destruction. Fang felt to penetrate the space between himself and his enemy, seek out and destroy.
I don't like sitting in this room. Something suspicious is going on. I don't know what.
After he'd finished his work for the day, Tom picked up his paycheck and went directly to the shop where he had pawned Linda's pendant. He enjoyed a feeling of relief having retrieved the pendant.
Any news of Linda?
I borrowed a pendant of hers. Master Nguyen thinks it's useful finding Linda. He thinks it's what the kidnappers are after. Let's go eat.
That's the car those men were driving.
Tom scratched down the license. The young couple followed it to the Hyatt Regency Hotel.
Pardon me. Could you give me the room number of the man who is just entering the elevator? I think my sister may have been with him, and I need to talk to her.
While the desk clerk was looking for the room number, Tom noticed a master key became left on the counter. He picked it up quickly and dropped it into his pocket.
That room number is 410, sir.
They walked to the Taekwondo studio. Thang sat alone in the room.
Master Nguyen, we need your help. Nancy has just spotted one of the men that kidnapped Linda, and we followed him. I think he may be Vietnamese. She recognized his car, that blue Lincoln that Linda said had followed her all the way from California.
Two factions are struggling. Government officials who tried to outlaw the Mahjong tournament to channel money associated with it into national defense, and outlaws who wish to retain the tournament funds for private purpose. The real quarrel is over money, nonetheless. The struggle was very bad for the economy of Vietnam, especially during the war. The tile's only reward is death and perpetual conflict. As long as the tournament exists, the tiles will be a source of malignant antagonism among men.
Youth is no excuse for stupidity. Money isn't going to buy return of my relatives or assure your sister's safety. What is money, measured against welfare of those you love? Acquisitive streaks will serve to bring you grief.
Thang took the elevator to the 4th floor and went to room 410, then burst into the room. Jiang was no stranger to violence. Swift and instinctively, he drew his knife, waved it threateningly for one fearful instant, and then lunged forward to thrust at the intruder's throat. Thang moved aside and disarmed Jiang, grasping the knife wielder's throat until he passed out. Ju, trying to move around Thang, met the violent energy of a kick that sent him sprawling on the floor unconscious.
Master Nguyen, are you all right?
Yes, Tom, I am all right. Everything is under control.
Is my sister here?
I think she is in the next room. I intended to find out but was detained by those two.
Linda, are you all right?
They were not eager to stay in the hotel room and locked the door behind them.
I cannot thank you enough, Master Nguyen.
You are welcome, Linda.
Was either man dead in the hotel?
No, they will be when their syndicate finds their failure.
My pendant, they asked me about that gold and diamond tile. I told them I gave it back to Dad.
Until it becomes returned, there will be others who seek it.
Then you keep it. Return it to whoever is looking for it.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate what you are doing.
My name is Thomas Bradley. I have information about the kidnapping of Linda Bradley.
You have found your sister. Is she all right?
My teacher fought two men who kidnapped Linda. If you send somebody to the hotel, room 410, the men are probably still there.
Son, what possessed you to pawn it? You had no right. It belonged to your sister.
She said that she didn't want it and that Master Nguyen should keep it. It was a reward to him for saving her.
It was the property of a group of black market hoodlums in Saigon. We have become well rid of it. Linda's safety is the only thing important. Mr. Bradley, Captain Lassiter, I have news regarding your daughter's kidnappers. They were alive. We have them in the hospital, under guard. We identified them as strong arms from San Francisco, both with substantial police records.
Thanks, Captain, for the information.
Thang saved enough money, he had a certain amount of flexibility in that regard, and was in good bargaining position now that the missing Mahjong tile was in his possession. Thang arrived in San Francisco as the sun was setting. Bui phoned his contact for Jiang and Ju.
Your people messed it up.
He'd accumulated funds for need to leave the country and hoarded it in a deposit box with the Mahjong tiles. Thang called from the airport.
This is B. What can I do for you?
I've a valuable piece of property belonging to Trung Van Nguyen. Where can we meet to discuss terms of an exchange?
The judge became disturbed to hear from Thang again, who had leveled cold, terrible threats in his direction before the two of them fled Vietnam.
Mr. Nguyen, your brother is dead. He died in Saigon. Su An Trang died while trying to escape detainment by Police Inspector Ngo.
Are you ready to negotiate the return of my family's property?
I become prepared to offer you $50,000 for the gambler's missing talisman.
You don't recognize irreparable damage to my family and to me by confiscating our property? You completely ignore the spiritual significance of the Wheel of Faith as well. You are a horrible custodian for the wheel. The tiles belong to the Buddhist people. I mean to return the Wheel of Luck to its originators.
Can't we make a deal?
It was beyond Buey's comprehension anyone would pass up money because of spiritual considerations.
You have not heard the last of me. Tonight, have the Wheel of Luck at your office.
The judge drove to the bank and retrieved the Wheel of Luck. He returned to his law office. Thang watched the taillights of Buey's yellow Mercedes as they faded southward in the fog, back across the bridge. Buey sat at his desk. He'd arranged protection.
I want men who can stop my adversary permanently. It has to look like he was killed during a break-in.
Thang cautiously pushed open the door to Buey's office and peered into the half-light.
Please come in. I've been expecting you. Why don't you sit down, let's talk.
A shot rang out and a bullet parted the air inches from Thang's forehead. Following the bullet, an assailant moved, intending to accomplish barehanded what the bullet had not. He saw Thang spin. A kick dropped him to the floor.
Stop him.
In moments his attackers lay unconscious.
Wait, I'll give you whatever you want.
Return my family's property.
Yes, I have everything right here.
Buey began to stack the gold rectangles on the desk, then withdrew a pistol hidden behind his briefcase. He aimed at Thang and squeezed the trigger. Thang detected movement of the trigger finger and moved just enough to avoid the bullet. His fist smashed Buey's temple. The judge dropped his weapon. Dead, he sagged forward. Feeling need for guidance, Thang's thoughts led him to seek a Buddhist temple in the Bay Area. He became acquainted with a man known as Brother Heap.
Brother Heap, you know the significance of the wheel. I have it in my possession. What should I do with it?
I knew that you would eventually ask me this question. In Tibet there is a lake called Manasrovar, and I want you to go there. You will come to understand why after you get there. It is a holy place, and there are many holy men gathered there.
Thang's journey to Tibet, his talks with the Buddhist priests whose temples had become located near Mansarovar Lake, and the final disposition of the Wheel of Luck took only a matter of weeks. To the troubled young man the task took a lifetime. He went in a boat alone to the center of the lake. As his boat moved with the breeze, he cast the mahjong tiles piece by piece into the icy waters. He watched reverently as the glistening golden tiles sank slowly to the bottom of the lake in oblivion. Thang returned to Columbus. He resumed the simple life he had before the tile of the summer sun disrupted it. Stan's nightmares of men who died and might still be alive had it not been for his weakness in the midst of the Vietnam War continued. At Stan's insistence, Peggy had gone to talk with John Hurst.
I was pregnant by another man before Stan and I were married. Nobody knows except Linda and now you. She has a right to know who her father is. I don't think Stan would believe me if I told him.
Are you going to tell him?
I still think about him with that girl in Vietnam.
Tell me about the time Stan came home on leave. He said he asked you to lie to the Red Cross so he could get out of Vietnam?
Yes, I lied for him. My husband needed me, and I felt sorry for him.
It's not for me to say what is right and what is wrong for you. That is up to you, not me. My task right now is to help Stan with his troubles, his nightmares and his drinking, and I hope you can help me help him. Will you do that? How was your talk with the psychologist?
He was asking whether you got me to lie so you got leave in Vietnam.
I never became so panicked in my life.
You know I lied for you.
I'd have done it for you.
I was pregnant before we became married. Linda is not your daughter. You have to start facing facts. You were not the one who killed those men in your platoon while you were on leave. Why do you think that you could have saved them? I'm telling these things to show why you keep burying yourself in booze.
Stan drank and was quick to plead for attention.
John, I need to talk to you. I've got a problem. I can't handle it. You've got to help me.
Take it easy. We'll get everything figured out. Just try not to get excited or I can't help you. Tell me what's the matter.
I'm afraid I am going to kill my wife.
Tell you what, I'll be free all afternoon. You come on over to my office right now, and we'll get everything squared away for you. How's that sound? Can you come over now? Only take it easy on the way.
Despite effects of the alcohol, Stan climbed into his car. On the road in front of his speeding Chevrolet, a Ponderous Railways bus shifted down into low gear. He plunged into the rear of the bus with a metal grinding, flesh-rending crash. Stan sat engulfed in the conflagration. Through the searing agony there moved the fragmentary thoughts of his love for Peggy, and his children, and Sue Ann. Then everything faded slowly into nothingness. Stanford Allen Bradley, Sergeant USA, retired, was dead. Stan's funeral had become held on a calm gray morning. As Peggy stood over his grave clinging to Tom, she displayed little of the abject sorrow she felt, but Linda and Nancy Fairchild, their arms around one another, wept quietly. After the funeral, Tom talked to Nancy about his father.
You know, I just can't get over my old man's car accident, especially after all the years he yelled at me warning me about driving safety. I'll miss his yelling.
Tom, do you love me?
Nancy, you know I do. I always have.
Tom, you know I love you. Now that we have been together, really together, I know that I would never want anyone else but you, ever. I'm glad I feel that way, because now, well Tom, I think I'm pregnant.
You are? Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. Well, what do you think? How do you feel?
Tom and Nancy became married the following week. Peggy continued to live in Stan's house with the memories of her husband, and banish forever from her mind the effects imposed on their lives by the tile of the summer sun.